Young boa constrictor gets caught in a sudden flood, clings to a fallen branch for hours, then slips into a hidden burrow to survive. Muddy water rushed past Kaya's coiled body as she gripped the floating mahogany branch with desperate strength. 3 days had passed since the flash flood tore through the Amazon basin, and the young boa constrictor hadn't eaten in over a week. Her normally vibrant brown and tan patterns had dulled from exhaustion and stress. The branch scraped against a partially submerged boulder, jolting her awake from a fitful rest. Around her, the swollen river carried debris from the destroyed forest, uprooted trees, tangled vines, and the occasional unfortunate creature that hadn't found higher ground in time. Kaya's forked tongue flicked out constantly, tasting the air for any sign of solid land or potential prey. As the current swept her around a bend, she spotted something promising. A rocky outcropping jutting from the water about 30 feet away. The problem was getting there. Boas weren't built for swimming across rushing torrents, but staying on this deteriorating branch meant certain death. Kaya made her decision. She released her grip and slipped into the churning water, her powerful muscles undulating in an S pattern as she fought against the current. The cold water shocked her system, but she pressed on, using every ounce of her remaining energy to angle toward the rocks. The current was stronger than expected. Just as her strength began to fail, a submerged log bumped against her side, providing just enough leverage to propel herself toward the outcropping. Her head broke the surface near the rocks, and she managed to wrap her tail around a sturdy root system that had somehow survived the flood. Hauling herself onto the narrow ledge, Kaya discovered she wasn't alone. A small green tree frog sat motionless in a crevice, its eyes wide with terror. Under normal circumstances, the frog would have made a quick snack, but something about their shared predicament made Kaya hesitate. They were both survivors, both fighting against impossible odds. The ledge was barely wide enough for her 6-foot length, but it was dry and stable. As night fell, the temperature dropped significantly. Kaya's cold-blooded metabolism slowed, conserving what little energy she had left. The frog remained perfectly still, perhaps understanding that movement might trigger the snake's predatory instincts. Dawn brought new challenges. The water level had risen during the night, and their rocky refuge was now only inches above the surface. Worse, Kaya could hear something large moving in the water nearby. The distinctive splash pattern of a caiman searching for easy prey. The black caiman's eyes appeared first, followed by its massive head as it investigated the outcropping. At 12 feet long, it dwarfed Kaya completely. The reptilian predator had likely been displaced by the flood as well, and it was hungry. Its gaze fixed on the coiled snake, calculating whether the meal was worth the effort. Kaya knew she couldn't outfight a caiman, especially in her weakened state. Instead, she did something unexpected. She remained absolutely motionless, mimicking the behavior of the little frog beside her. Her breathing slowed to almost nothing, and she let her body go completely limp. The caiman circled the rocks twice, its powerful tail creating small waves that lapped at the ledge. After several tense minutes, it apparently decided the snake was either dead or not worth the energy expenditure. The massive predator disappeared beneath the murky surface, leaving only ripples behind. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, warming Kaya's scales and gradually restoring some of her strength. The frog finally moved, hopping to a different crevice where a small pool of rainwater had collected. It was then that Kaya noticed something crucial, a narrow opening in the rock face behind where the frog had been sitting. Investigating carefully, she discovered that the opening led to a small cave system, probably carved out by centuries of seasonal flooding. The passage was tight, but she managed to squeeze through, her flexible ribs compressing to allow passage through spaces that seemed impossibly narrow. The cave opened into a larger chamber, and Kaya's tongue immediately detected something wonderful, the scent of other animals. Not predators, but potential prey that had also sought refuge from the flood. Her heat-sensing pits confirmed what her tongue had told her. There were warm-blooded creatures deeper in the cave system. Following the scent trail, she discovered a small colony of bats hanging from the cave ceiling. They had been roosting here long before the flood, and their presence meant this cave system was stable and had multiple entrances for air circulation. More importantly, it meant food. Kaya positioned herself along one of the walls where the bats would have to pass during their evening exodus. As darkness fell outside, the bats began to stir. Her strike was swift and precise, catching one of the smaller bats as it flew past. It wasn't a large meal, but it was her first food in over a week. The cave system proved to be extensive, with multiple chambers connected by narrow passages. Over the following days, as the floodwaters slowly receded, Kaya explored her temporary home. She discovered that the little green frog had followed her into the caves, apparently having decided that staying near the snake was safer than facing the dangers outside alone. In one of the deeper chambers, Kaya found evidence of previous flood survivors, old bones and shed snake skins from other serpents who had used this refuge in past disasters. The cave had been a sanctuary for generations of displaced wildlife, a hidden ark in the heart of the Amazon. As her strength returned with regular meals of bats and the occasional cave-dwelling rodent, Kaya began to venture toward the cave entrances to assess the outside world. The water level was dropping steadily, revealing a landscape transformed by the flood. Familiar trees were gone, new channels had been carved through the forest floor, and the entire ecosystem would need time to recover. But life was already returning. Birds called from the remaining trees, and she could smell the musk of mammals reclaiming their territories. The forest was resilient, just as she had proven to be. On the 7th day after finding the cave, Kaya made a decision. The flood waters had receded enough to reveal solid ground, and her instincts told her it was time to establish a new territory. The cave had saved her life, but she was a creature of the forest canopy and the ground below, not the underground darkness. She emerged from the cave system in the early morning, her scales gleaming in the filtered sunlight. The little frog appeared at the cave entrance, watching her departure. In an unusual gesture for a predator, Kaya paused and flicked her tongue in the frog's direction, not in hunger, but in what could only be described as acknowledgement. They had survived together, and that created a bond that transcended the usual predator-prey relationship. The new landscape was challenging to navigate, but Kaya's powerful muscles and excellent climbing abilities served her well. She found a suitable tree with thick branches and good cover, perfect for ambushing the birds and small mammals that were beginning to return to the area. As she settled into her new territory, coiled among the branches of a strangler fig, Kaya reflected on her ordeal. The flood had taken everything familiar from her world, but it had also taught her something valuable about survival. Greatest strength isn't in fighting the current, but in learning to flow with it until you find your footing again. Weeks passed as Kaya established her hunting patterns in this transformed landscape. The strangler fig became her fortress, its thick aerial roots providing perfect concealment and multiple escape routes. From her elevated perch, she could survey the recovering forest floor and the network of new streams that crissculated through what had once been solid ground. The ecosystem was rebuilding itself in fascinating ways. Plants that had been buried under decades of forest debris now sprouted in the newly cleared areas. Different bird species moved in, attracted by the changed habitat, and with them came new opportunities for hunting. Kaya adapted her techniques, learning the flight patterns of these unfamiliar prey species. One evening, as she lay coiled in her favorite hunting spot, she detected a familiar scent on the breeze. Following the trail led her to a small clearing where she discovered something remarkable. The little green frog from the cave, now thriving in a temporary pond formed by the receding floodwaters. It had found its own way to adapt and survive in this new world. The frog looked up as Kaya approached, showing no fear. In that moment, both creatures understood something profound about survival. It wasn't just about individual strength or cunning. Sometimes it was about recognizing when to fight, when to hide, when to help, and when to simply endure. As the dry season approached and the temporary ponds began to shrink, Kaya watched the frog hop away toward the permanent water sources deeper in the forest. She never saw it again, but the lesson remained. The flood had taken her old territory, but it had given her something more valuable, the knowledge that she could survive anything nature threw at her. Years later, when other floods came, Kaya would remember the cave system and guide other displaced creatures to safety. The survivor had become a guardian, and the forest was stronger for it. The Amazon had taught her its most important lesson. In the face of overwhelming change, adaptation isn't just about surviving. It's about learning to thrive in whatever world emerges from the chaos.